What's going on, Elevation Nation? Sam and I are excited to be back with you this week for another amazing conversation with a new elevator. Kayla Schreibstein joins Elevation Nation. What's going on, Kayla? Welcome to the pod.
Hey Parker, hi Sam, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. Parker was talking you up, and I was like, all right, I'm ready to meet Kayla. Let's do this thing and welcome her to the nation. So we are honored and excited to have you. I wish we were down in sunny Miami hanging out with you in person, but maybe we'll save that for the winter time when we go visit all of our lovely elevators down in Florida. But Kayla, we are so honored and excited to have you. Before we get into things, obviously we know who you are, but for Elevation Nation, can we get a little elevator pitch on who you are?
Sure. Hi guys. Parker did say my last name right, which kudos to you, Parker. It's a tough one. Kayla Schreibstein. I'm 29 years old. I'm actually from Longmeadow, Massachusetts, a very small town in Western Mass. Hopefully some listeners have heard of it, but most people just assume I'm from Boston when I say I'm from Massachusetts. But about an hour and a half outside of Boston, and I am currently a sales girl. Been in tech sales since I graduated college, but I really describe myself, and my friends, I guess, describe me as the side hustle queen. I do a lot outside of my 9 to 5, so really excited to tell you guys a little bit more about the multiple side gigs I'm pursuing outside of the traditional career path and how that's kind of led me to where I am today, to being a part of Elevation Nation now. So really excited.
So, Kayla, obviously you do very different things for your full-time job, and you have your side hustle with Friends of Kayla, which we'll get into in a bit. Sam and I have been at our full-time jobs since college, and we're still building on the side with Elevation Nation. So does that make us the side hustle kings, I guess, maybe?
Yeah, I guess you guys could start calling yourselves that now too.
I
But
like
I
that.
mean, in some cases, like side hustle is true because I do make money from some of the things that I do on the side, but so far Friends of Kayla is not revenue generating. So I just want to make that very clear. We're not doing that for fun, really just a passion project. I think similar to what you guys have been doing with Elevation Nation. So we definitely have some parallels there.
Totally. And I know you've done other things in the past. So, like, can you walk us through a couple of what you've done in the past and then how that kind of brought you to Friends of Kayla? Because I know that there's a bigger mission behind what you're doing with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was 25, I was living in New York City, working in tech sales at Salesforce. Was there for about 5 years before doing what I do now at Monday.com. And while I was at Salesforce, I just realized, and like, I'm really not passionate about tech. This is paying me well. It's great. It's a great 9 to 5, but I have all of this time outside of my day to day. Like, why don't I pursue something else, brush up on other skill sets I know are there, but haven't really come to fruition yet? And that's when I thought to reach out to a few influencers in the city that I'd been following at the time. One of those was Lindsay Metzlar. I only reached out to Lindsay, but I was like, I've been following this girl, Lindsay. She started her own podcast. She's a dating guru expert. Like, I have seen her come from, having all these tumultuous relationships to now being married, and really just giving her listeners and female followers the power to really date with intention and be selective as women should be, and really not to settle. And I really loved her mission. So I reached out to her over Instagram DM and just sent her, a networking like DM. It was really, took that one from Salesforce of using like a professional networking. No, just saying who I am, introducing myself, and just telling her I'd love to learn a little bit more about the influencer space and like influencer management specifically. Here I am thinking Lindsay, who probably at the time had like 60,000 followers. I'm here thinking, maybe she's a manager. Maybe I could get into influencer management. Little do I know, like, she's a big deal. Like, she had a whole team behind her, all of that. But what's to say is that I shot my shot, and always shoot your shot because you never know where it will lead you. And Lindsay replied to me and was like, hey, it sounds great. I'd love to meet you for a coffee. Let's do it. So I met with her. 25-year-old me is like fangirling, trying not to fangirl over like one of my favorite podcasters. And she essentially said, I'm starting to ramp up my events again. We were getting out of that post-COVID era where people were really looking for more meaningful connections. And I love bringing people together. I love throwing events of my own. So this seemed super up my alley. So started doing singles events with Lindsay because that obviously aligned well with her brand as a dating influencer and coach. And I did that for 4 years. So learned a ton from doing that. I, was making money doing that on the side. We threw like monthly events, really expanded my network through that. And, maybe didn't find a boyfriend through those events specifically, but, met guys along the way. I did date someone during that time. But I think the catalyst for pursuing like my own podcast, which I'm doing today, is certainly attributed to Lindsay and being exposed to an industry that I really knew nothing about. So it was a great experience. I did that for 4 years. And unfortunately, a few months ago, since I moved to Miami, we concluded our time together, but it was awesome and happy to share a little bit more too.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with Shoot Your Shot, because most people want to help other human beings, and you never know what it could lead to. So I'm proud of you for doing that. It sounds like an incredible experience where you're able to gain some new skills. I do have to say, if Lindsay's listening to this, I'm sorry, because I did upset you 3 years ago with a hot take I had on a dating podcast. So I'd like to apologize. I did not mean to start any beef, and I love and respect you, and now we love Kayla. So please don't come at me. I don't want any subtweets on any of my hot dating takes. I'm going to keep it totally clean today. But I think it's incredible, Kayla, that you were able to really reach out to someone you looked up to learn a totally new skill set. And when Parker and I started Elevation Nation, that was not at the forefront of our mind. We were not like, we're going to start podcasting so we can learn storytelling or public speaking or networking or connections. It was, we're going to start a podcast because we felt extremely lost as young men entering the real world. We had done what our parents had told us to do, which was get great jobs in Big Four consulting and move to the big city. And we were pretty miserable, and we realized a lot of young people were as well. And the podcast was a medium in which we could really express ourselves and learn from other people. And so I obviously am a big fan of podcasting. I think it helps you grow your network and gain some valuable skills. And I'm excited that you're now in this world with us, and I think you're really going to love it.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, I mean, I will say too, like, I think that's part of the reason why I reached out to Lindsay, right, is because I wasn't feeling fulfilled at my day job, and I knew I had time outside of my 9 to 5. I think that's the biggest takeaway is if you have that flexibility, which not everyone has, especially in New York City, maybe you're working a finance job, working 12-hour days, which I totally understand you may not have the capacity to do something on the side, but if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling unfulfilled, it doesn't mean you need to go out and pursue your passion to the fullest ability. In fact, I think you can do things on the side if you have the bandwidth to do so, and maybe it doesn't turn into your real job. Maybe it just is side income for you, and like, that's great. And I've accepted that fact like more recently, because I think, with starting a podcast, with doing this stuff with Lindsay, I thought maybe this would turn into a full-time thing, right? But at the end of the day, like, that's not my goal. My goal is to be fulfilled in whatever else I'm doing and pursue this as a hobby. If it ends up being a full-time thing, that's awesome. But I make an awesome income and salary from my current day job, and let's keep it that way. And I'm pretty happy at my current day job. So I think as long as you're not miserable in your career, see what else you can explore and shoot your shot and try to see what else is out there, because you really never know.
It's kind of funny how similar you think about your side hustle or just life in general, because that's kind of the same approach that Sam and I have too. And we learned it a very difficult way, actually. Back before Elevation Nation, we had another company called Hired You. And the idea intention was to grow Hired You so that we could leave our job. And that once we started making money, the whole idea of why we were spending time on the side hustle was to make more money and then leave our full-time job. But what did that leave us with? Very unfulfilled days, because every day was like, how can we make that number where we can leave? Whereas with Elevation Nation, it's completely flipped. Sam and I realized that we don't hate our day jobs anymore. We actually have found our own lanes and gravitated towards places that we feel accepted with. But with Elevation Nation, it's all mission driven. We want to help young people exercise their mindset so that they can go conquer the real world. We do that through the podcast. We've done 400 episodes. We speak around the country now, and that's fulfilling. And yeah, we're making some money now, but is it enough to say, hey, we're going to quit EY, quit our full-time job? Not yet. But I love your perspective on it, Kayla, because it's like it still allows us to grow this skill in podcasting, in storytelling, in public speaking, in networking, and for me, podcast editing, for Sam, building apps and stuff like that. And maybe one day it will get us to a point where we can quit our full-time job. But it's so much more fulfilling now because we're able to be more mission-driven with Elevation Nation opposed to every morning, oh my God, Sam, when are we making this next dollar?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult to start something when there's so much on the line, right? Whereas like, let's let this grow organically and see where it goes. And like you said, Parker, you've had 400 episodes. That's, first of all, I'm so impressed because, and I love being on the other side of being interviewed because doing podcast interviews is really fucking hard. Sorry, I hope I can swear. Really fucking hard. And I didn't realize that. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm in sales. I naturally connect with people. I naturally ask discovery questions all day long. Like, that's what I do. But it's completely different when you're talking to a different person every single week who's doing a million different things. So kudos to you guys for even like getting this far, because I think people, can see this from the outside and just think, oh, it's, here they go again. They're talking, it's easy, whatever. Like, this is not easy, and it's a skill set to develop, and it's a skill set I thought I had, and I definitely don't have it. And storytelling and just learning how to public speak in general is something that has been a challenge, and it's been a good challenge. So I think this is something, and I haven't even fully shared what my podcast is, but being able to get into the podcasting space myself and become this podcast host has allowed me to really challenge myself. And that's something I was certainly like looking for in my life to feel fulfilled. I think that's what a lot of people feel that they're missing in their day-to-day jobs is the lack of challenge. So definitely this was something that I didn't think would be challenging or as challenging, but it certainly is. So I totally get what you guys are saying.
Well, speaking of that and Friends of Kayla and how you were looking for fulfillment, you could have started a podcast around anything, around sports, around fashion, around food, around moving to Miami. But you decided to start it around Friends of Kayla, which I'm going to let you explain in your own words what it is. But there's a reason I have my necklace out. We'll get into that in a minute. So explain to us the inspiration behind Friends of Kayla.
Yeah, well, Sam, we can't see your necklace, so let's just like make sure we can see it. Amazing. We love a high necklace. So yeah, for the audience here listening, so I started a podcast because I had this side hustle running events for We Met at Acme, which we just talked about. So this podcast was inspired through the work with Lindsay. And I was thinking, I have this amazing side hustle. I'm going to start a podcast about side hustle culture in New York City because I knew all these cool people. I had all these friends that not only were doing things day to day and their corporate job, but were doing fun things on the side. Maybe that's like dog walking for a billionaire and making thousands of dollars a month, or doing dating consultations on the side. But I had some really interesting friends that had these side gigs, so I was like, let's explore that. I have a side gig myself. This would be really interesting. So that's kind of where it started. It was actually called Side Piece back in the day when I started this in August. Terrible name, but it was kind of a play on words. But slowly through like different interviews and conversations, I started really to like narrow down, like, what is my niche here? Like, this just seems so general. I'm this random girl from New York City that, says she had a side hustle, but like, what is my like real connection to people beyond that? And I realized like with where my life has gone in the last few years, like a lot of what I kept coming back to is being Jewish and being proud to be Jewish, which is something that, I can't say I always was the most proud Jewish woman. I think I grew up in a really small town in Massachusetts. We had Jewish people. I went to Hebrew school, but I was always the only Jewish girl on my basketball team. I was always, the only Jewish girl in my classes. I was always around, diverse groups of people, which I embrace my entire life. But when something so horrible happens, like October 7th, it really shifts your mindset and is a reality check. And for me, the last few years, I've been working for an Israeli company. I, really started to feel more connected to my roots and really starting to feel more confident in being a Jew. I think, having a last name like Schreibstein, where my whole life, it's pretty obvious that I'm Jewish, right? So people would always like mispronounce my last name. And that's like why I shouted at Parker in the beginning. So I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you. You said it right. Because I think I'm scarred from growing up and people pronouncing it wrong, truthfully. And it was something I was always like embarrassed by, honestly, which is really sad to say. But in my late 20s now, being Jewish is a huge, huge part of my identity, and it always has been. It just hasn't been something I was overtly, showcasing about myself. And since October 7th, like I have, close friends in Tel Aviv, and I feel so deeply connected there, not only because of my corporate job, because of my friends, but also because of the relationships that I had like from college. A lot of those, unfortunately, have drastically changed since October 7th broke out, and I have had to adapt to new relationships, have had hard conversations with friends who don't see eye to eye with me on what's going on in the world. And it's been a wake-up call the last couple of years, realizing that as a Jewish person, I feel like the Jews only have each other, which is amazing in a lot of ways, and it's beautiful, but it's really sad. And I know that there are so many other people like me feeling this way. So, through some reflection, I really started to think about what I could bring into this world. I knew that like I am here for a bigger purpose than to work a 9 to 5. And what can I bring into the world that will really be relatable and also kind of tie in this like Judaism aspect of, people in my life that I'm deeply close with, that are true hustlers pursuing their passions. Like, how could I tie that in together? So that's where the rebrand of Friends of Kayla came about a few months into this podcast journey. And it's been amazing. I've been able to interview some, really famous activists in the space. I don't know if you all know who Rudy Rockman is, but he's a brilliant guy. I've had some really hard conversations with him that have been scary to post online. But, I think it's made me a stronger person. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, and I feel like there's true purpose behind my mission. And I just want the world to know, like, for people who may not even know what a Jewish person is, like, these are Jewish people in my life who I personally think are amazing, inspiring, and doing such unique things that need to be exposed. And so that's what Friends of Kayla is. It's really a platform to showcase people in my life who inspire me, in hopes that they'll share with the world how Judaism has really inspired them to be successful.
Well, Kayla, I got to say, and I know I'm speaking for Sam too, like, we're inspired by you, and we're inspired by those conversations that you're having. Certainly because they're needed in the world in 2025, but they're not easy conversations. They're probably very, very, very challenging, vulnerable, deep, hard conversations. And that is a pillar of what we do at Elevation Nation, is trying to have the real conversations too. And so we know that those can be, or get to a place where you're sitting there like, wow, this is tough. And then one thing is to record it, and another thing is to share it. And so just like want to say thank you, like, as a Jewish man myself living in New York, I think it's really empowering, and, to my point earlier, inspiring that you are an advocate for the young Jewish adult in how we feel, and having those really true and meaningful and purposeful conversations, and sharing it online, sharing it with people who probably have never met a Jew in their entire life. And maybe those people have seen things in the news or online, got into chat rooms, and read a completely wrong thing about who we are as people. And yet I'm sure there's debate and conversations that you've had with people you've never met before. And I think we need to have more of those conversations, the hard conversations, because that's how we elevate as people, not just Jews, but as people in general. And so I just want to say I thank you and commend you, because it's really freaking amazing to see.
Thank you. That means a lot. And I think, I'm sure you guys can relate to this too. When you started the podcast, is that, people may think, oh my God, it's so cringe. Kayla's starting this podcast. Like, who does she think she is, right? And there's definitely been those moments where I'm like, what am I doing here? But kind of like center back to reality and think about like my purpose on this earth, as spiritual as that may sound to you all. But I'm just like, there's something bigger for me out there, right? There's something bigger for each and every one of us, and you're not defined by your 9 to 5. And I think that's what's so special about what you guys are doing, is just bringing awareness to the possibilities that are out there for people to pursue, whether that's something that makes them money, whether that's something that just makes them happy, or something that brings them joy. And, it's interesting. And I think in the beginning we were chatting a little bit about Sam and his controversy with Lindsay and getting back to the dating thing. But I think relationships too can really shift your perspective. And I know for myself, like when I was thinking about what we were going to chat about today, I was thinking like, I've always been this like hustler kind of entrepreneurial spirit, but where did this really come from? And I think when you're in relationships or in the wrong relationships, like you obviously get out of those and you realize like, oh my gosh, there were all these things I took away from that person that I'm, no longer compatible with. And, we are not together for a reason. And you can learn a lot about like what you're looking for in a partner from a breakup, right? But for me, my last relationship was a couple of years ago. What I learned was not only like what I'm looking for in the right partner, but also I learned that like, I remember like sitting on the couch some nights when I was like dating this guy who's an investment banker, and he was, learning Hebrew after work. He was reading the newspaper. He was just like doing all of these things and really trying to elevate himself as a professional. And I was just kind of like hanging out, watching TV, like worked my 9 to 5, worked out, was probably working on events for Lindsay, right? But that didn't take up a ton of time. And I think that relationship really taught me like, wow, like there is a bigger reason that I'm on this earth. And I have so much more to me than just being with a guy. Like a guy doesn't define who I am. When I'm 35 years old and married, I of course want a family, but like I want something for me. And this is something that will always be there for me, whether this Friends of Kayla podcast is successful or not. There will be something else that I try in a couple of years, right? That's the beauty of entrepreneurship. And it doesn't mean that needs to be your day job. Like you can pursue this on the side and have something of your own. So that's just the message that I want to get across to people, is like, things don't define you, right? Find what defines you. And that's what I strive to do every day, is doing it for me.
I've been doing the podcast and friends with Parker long enough that I can read his mind now. But it's my turn to talk. So I'm just going to say what he was going to say, which is, Kayla, you get to define your own success of Friends of Kayla, right? And like, it doesn't matter how many downloads or followers or how many famous people you have on, if you're enjoying the conversations, and if you get to say like, hey, future kids, check out these cool conversations mom had to showcase the stories of our people, like that is successful. It doesn't matter who looks at it. And so I just want to remind you that you took the hardest step, which is starting. That's already a success, and it will continue to be a success. Like you get to define that for yourself. So I just wanted to say that point. We're very proud of you for taking that leap into the podcasting world with us, and obviously sharing Jewish stories is so important, but I'd like to share a quick story of my own, if that's okay. We've had 2 elevators join Elevation Nation. Elevator number 7, coach of the Wizards, assistant coach, Peter Fusilero, who is not Jewish, is non-denominational, and Jared Butler, point guard for the Philadelphia 76ers, also not Jewish. 2 really close friends of Parker and myself came on the podcast, and one of the most beautiful things that I have with those guys is a relationship around religion and educating them around Judaism, as they don't have many, if any, Jewish friends beyond me. And they've taught me a lot about what Christianity means to them. And so this last week, they invited me to an Easter brunch. I know this is coming out in a few weeks, but it was just Easter. And they said, do you want to come to our church with us? They met at church, some of my other friends, the Perkins. And so I said, sure. Like, I've never really done anything like that. And so for me, it was a really eye-opening experience. Obviously, all churches are very different. But I walked in, there was like screens and graphics and a rock band playing, and the pastor gave this sermon that was really interesting. And I was able to compare that to some of the things that I liked from my temple growing up. I was able to talk with them after of some of the takeaways I had from the sermon, from the service, and how that differed from Judaism. And I think as we have some of those conversations amongst Jews, while that is so important to solidify our understanding, I think it's also our responsibility to help educate those that aren't Jewish on who we are, what we believe in, the different types of Judaism, why Judaism is a culture and a religion, and all of that. And so I think it's a beautiful thing that you're doing, sharing the Jewish stories. And I think a lot of people that aren't Jewish are really going to benefit from just learning from us and our religion and our culture.
Totally. Yeah, and I love that you said that, because side project, hustle, whatever you want to call it, is throwing Shabbat dinners. So there have been, a few Shabbat clubs, I guess you could call them, that have originated post 10/7, and one of those is called Friday Tables. So great segue, actually, Sam. Friday Tables is a Shabbat club that started in New York. We now have a Miami branch, which I am now starting since I moved here a few months ago. There's a Boston branch as well. We'll have to get one going in DC for you, Sam, so you can get to some Shabbat dinners. But an initiative that I started, with Friday Tables, especially with that, bringing it recently down to Miami, is let's invite some non-Jewish friends to dinner. Let's expose them to our culture and really show people what being Jewish is about. Because for me, it's not so much spiritually Jewish. Like, I don't frequent temple, right? I celebrate the high holidays, but I'm not the most religious person. But culturally, I feel so deeply connected. And I think that's really hard for other people to understand, because not every religion is like that. I think Judaism is certainly unique in that way. But it's been really, really special to see the reactions of people. I've gotten several DMs from non-Jewish people being like, hey, I've seen your content. I'm not Jewish. I would love to come to the next Shabbat dinner. I love the Jewish culture. And that makes my day. If I can just get one person who isn't Jewish to come to a Shabbat dinner for the first time, I've done my job.
I love that. And I think this is in my opinion, a slight flaw of our beautiful religion that I got to see the total opposite effect firsthand when I went to church this past week. Was they were saying, welcome, come, one all, to, join Jesus and join our church and do all this stuff, and very welcoming. Whereas in Judaism, we actually don't really recruit or invite people, and you have to ask 3 times if you want to convert and join Judaism. And so I think the more we can make Judaism, both as a religion and a culture, as welcoming as possible to other people, I think we are very welcoming and loving people. And so I think I'm really proud, Kayla, of what you're doing and kind of opening Shabbat as an entryway to so many non-Jews to see what we're all about.
I think, too, also from the perspective of people who grew up with me, I grew up in Baltimore, very predominantly Jewish area, but I went to a private school and I was one of 8 Jews in a class of 80. And so, although we were small and mighty among our class, still people were exposed to our culture and who we were and got to know us. But I think even more so since October 7th as well, there's how many people in the United States alone, let alone the world, right? 400 plus million people. And I think a lot of those people have never met a Jew before. And I would assume a lot of those who have never met a Jew understand what it means to be a Jew from either people that they know or what they read on the internet or what they see on TV. And that's really scary to me. I even came across a video this morning that a friend at APAC, who works at APAC, sent me, of someone getting on a stage and trying to debate someone about the most ridiculous things that Jews do in the world. And I was sitting there and I was actually working out to it because it was making me angry. It made me want to work out harder. But I just I responded to him. I said, this is obviously insane. This guy's a moron, blah, blah, blah. But what scares me the most is that there's not just one of these guys. There's more and more and more of them. And that is really frightening to me. And, Kayla, I know you're having conversations with people who are much more versed on the topic of October 7th and much more versed in Judaism than, Sam and I are, right? So I'm curious, from your conversations that you've had, is there one story that resonates that you could possibly share with us about your understanding of our culture that you maybe didn't know before?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, from my interview with, Rudy Rockman, who I suggest you guys, look up if you don't know him. But he went to Columbia University because he was like, this is the most anti-Semitic university in the country, and I want to go here and challenge people. And what he really prides himself on is like not being afraid to be Jewish and not being afraid to show who you are. And we had a little debate over that on Friends of Kayla because I said to him, like Sam has his hideout, loud and proud. We love that. But I, have a Jewish star. I have like a Hebrew necklace. And while, I feel very safe wearing that in Miami, unfortunately in New York City, like I don't feel super safe wearing that. And Rudy was like, well, you're, by hiding who you are playing into this narrative that it's okay for Jewish people to be hunted, to be, stigmatized as this inferior group, as this group that's labeled, the reason for the government going under, like whatever it may be, like we're the scapegoat for so many things, right? So by doing that and by hiding who we are is actually playing into the narrative. And I thought that was really, really eye-opening because I never thought about it that way. I just thought of it as I'm protecting myself by hiding this, right? But in fact, he would actually say the opposite, that you're doing the complete opposite and you should really be loud, be proud, because if we can't be loud and proud, then who else will ever stand up for us? And I agree with him now. So, I'm not in New York anymore, but when I do go back and visit for work, whatever it may be, to go see friends, like I do plan on showing it, as scary as that might be. And, whether that means like carrying on pepper spray or doing what I need to do, right? I'll do that. But it's just a scary world that we live in. But to his point, like you can't be afraid. Like what else, what message is that sending to the rest of the world if we have to hide who we are?
I couldn't agree more. I think Parker and I, as we've had the podcast, we weren't sure if we were even going to talk about our employer, let alone our religion. But it's so core and fundamental of who Parker and I are. I mean, we met at API, for God's sakes. Like, we obviously are very proud of our Judaism together. I was just the co-best man in Parker's wedding, and we had a heck of a lot of Judaism in that whole thing. And I think it's part of our identity. It's part of who we are. We're obviously very proud of it, and we're just excited that you are so proud as well and sharing the stories of us. And so, Kayla, you shared, some of the guests that you had, obviously Rudy, but like you said, this is just the beginning for you. What is next for Friends of Kayla? Where are you trying to take this besides giving you fulfillment?
Yeah, so I'm actually going on a trip to Israel this summer through Birthright. It's a new trip called Storyteller. So I actually was connected to this amazing woman, Jacqueline, who's building this program for influential entrepreneurial creators. So apparently I qualify under that, which is cool. I'm, at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to the other true creators and influencers that will be on this trip, but it'll be a trip of 40 people. We're going to Tel Aviv, we're going to be in the south, we're going to be in the north for a total of 10 days. And it's going to be an awesome experience where we're able to go through all these like educational sessions to really be able to establish what, is defined as a Jewish voice. So for me personally, with trying to establish with where I'm going with Friends of Kayla and being able to be a better storyteller, I think this trip will be super impactful because I'll be able to learn a little bit more about how to actually do what I want to do. And I think a lot of that comes down to the education behind it, but also just the time. Like we're busy people, we work 9 to 5, right? So it's just kind of like curating that story for my audience and being able to have the tools to be able to do that. So I'm really excited for this trip. There's going to be, like I said, an amazing cohort of people going on this trip. 2 of those people have actually already interviewed, so that's really exciting. They'll be on the trip, and it'll be a good way to like network and meet more people to come on the podcast and share their stories. So the whole idea is that it's people that are doing something like outside of the Jewish world, but they're obviously Jewish and could potentially use their platform to spread light, spread positivity, and just be proud of who we are. So yeah, really looking forward to that trip. So that's been a really great positive of starting this platform is just getting more recognition and exposure to different opportunities like that. So really, really grateful that I was invited on this trip and excited to see what that brings.
I mean, sounds incredible. I'm very jealous of you. Also sounds like you got 40 more potential podcast guests, as well as so many other people that you will eventually meet. And I imagine as well, on top of that, you have some more versatile content that you could bring to Friends of Kayla too, beyond the podcast. Sam just bought little mics. He wants to go do some little street interviews.
Street
I don't know.
interviews. Nice.
We'll see. But maybe that's to come for Friends of Kayla as well. I love it. All right, let's move quickly to our rapid fire. We'll ask you some quick questions, Kayla, and hopefully they're not too difficult. So, every Jew loves a good bagel. I got my go-to bagel order. Sam and I want to know, what's your go-to bagel order?
Everything bagel, chive cream cheese, a little scallion in there maybe, and lox, of course. Got to do a bagel.
Regular lox or belly lox? This is a big debate in my household right now.
What are I've never had belly lox.
Belly lox. Oh, baby. Next
time you go to tell.
Next time you go to the deli, a Jewish deli, ask for belly lox. It's a completely different experience. I will say it's very salty, but there's nothing like it. A little pricier too, but that stuff hits.
Okay, sounds quality. I gotta check it out. Belly lox.
Belly lox. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Learn something new.
Learn something new every day.
All right, Kayla, do you have a dream Jewish guest you want to interview on the pod?
That is a good question. I think Tiffany Haddish would be really cool. I definitely want to get someone that's not like a typical, what you would think of when you think of a typical Jewish person, right? She's an actress, she's a Black woman, she happens to be Jewish as well. She's a celebrity, so I think she would be a really cool guest to have on the pod. So if she's listening, Tiffany, let me know if you want to come on, girl.
I love it. You know, there's so many incredible Jews out there. I think there's probably so many people that you want to interview. And Sam and I will be waiting to watch and see you continue to meet incredible Jewish people. All right, last rapid fire. Sam and I love to read. I got a lot of books behind me. My wife is literally getting angry at me every time I ask for a book recommendation because there's no more space on the book shelf. But we do ask this question in every episode. What's your book recommendation for us?
I hope no one's given this yet because it's definitely a hot one right now, but it might be basic, but I gotta say Let Them by Mel Robbins. The Let Them theory. Have you guys heard of it?
Why for you? What resonates about the book?
Yeah, I think just, now being a 29-year-old woman, I feel like in the past, I was always so worried about missing out and kind of trying to control a lot of things in my life. Like I'm a very type A person. I just wanted my life mapped out. I was very focused on the wrong things, I think, in my early 20s. And I think I wasted a lot of time and energy worrying about other people. So the Let Them theory just kind of teaches you to let that go. Just let them. They're going to do what they want to do. It's your life, not theirs. And just focus on yourself, control your own narrative. So I love that. And I really think living by that has really made me, I think, let go of just that control and just live life in the present.
It's a beautiful theory. It's a perfect segue into our last question, which every single elevator that joins Elevation Nation and every single person we speak to around the globe, we help create a mental motto, which is a phrase that embodies who you are and how you live life. So Kayla, what is your mental motto?
Protect your peace because no one else can but yourself. And what I mean by that is if you don't want to go out, don't go. FOMO isn't real. It's a social construct. And you will be way happier if you just say no and protect your energy because I always said yes to things. And I'm not saying don't be a yes woman or a yes man. I love being a yes woman. You should always take on every opportunity that you can, but weigh the pros and cons of that opportunity. Is it going to make you feel more energized? Do you like the people that you're around, right? Who are you surrounding yourself with? How do you feel in that moment? And how will you feel the next day? And protect your peace. It's okay to say no. It's okay to miss out on some things sometimes because you're really not missing out.
It's a great great mental motto. Certainly one that Sam and I have many, many conversations about, protecting your peace. I love that. Ooh, maybe that's even the episode title. I don't know, Sam. We'll have to debate that one. But Kayla, on behalf of Sam, myself, and everyone listening, Elevation Nation, we just got to say thank you. Thank you for getting vulnerable with us. Thank you for sharing who you're about, what you're doing with Friends of Kayla, of course, what you're doing in your full-time job. Because, you know, when Sam and I set out on a mission to have these conversations 5 years ago and 400 episodes ago, we wanted to uncover the stories of people who are chasing their dreams, and not necessarily just for money, but for fulfillment or to show others a way of life. And we just appreciate that you were able to share a little bit of what your mindset looks like and how you approach your day to day, because I know it will help some people maybe or hopefully take that step too. So, behalf of Sam, myself, Elevation Nation, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, this is really fun. See, isn't it just the best, just having conversations?
Exactly.
And hopefully someone will take something away from it. That's always the goal. So thank you, guys. Really, really fun. Appreciate it.
All right, Elevation Nation. Until next week. Peace.